Lim Kim San, nicknamed Mr. HDB, was a famous Peranakan for his various contributions over 5 ministerial and board roles. He laid the foundations for the HDB to build homes for 80% of the population, resolving the housing crisis in Singapore. He also advocated for Singapore's individual currency during his stint as the Minister of Finance and allowed Singapore's currency to be independent of foreign influence. Here is the story of a man that quite literally changed the future of Singapore. Mr. HDB, after being appointed chairman of Singapore's Housing and Development Board HDB in 1960, Lim Kim San went about to survey the sprawling slums in Chinatown, which was at that time housed many of the new immigrants who arrived by the tens of thousands. He came across a laborer in a bunk who had a blanket pulled right up to his neck. Lim asked the man whether he was sick. The laborer replied, "No. I've got no pants on." Lim asked him why. He replied, "My other brother has just taken my pants out. I'm wearing briefs." Lim's thoughts on the man's reply, "No, I don't think he was in briefs. There was no such thing as briefs at that time. You see how poor they were. They had to share clothes. The dead were not exempt from sharing, either. In those days, there were shops which pulled clothing and shoes off the dead to sell them. My God, I thought to myself, I really must help these people." From then on, he started work on the HDBs, first by reforming and restaffing the Singapore Improvement Trust (SIT). After that, he led the building of many HDBs as chairman and during 2 stints on the Minister for National Development. He faced opposition by various opposition leaders but rebutted them because the HDB had built as many flats in 1 year as SIT did in 32. During his visits to his contested constituency, he pointed to blocks of uncompleted HDB flats, indicating his ability to house the people and that the opposing communists were unable to beat that Singapore currency. After the separation of Singapore from Malaysia, Singapore's independence was seen as key to development in the midst of less than friendly neighbors. As the finance minister, Mr. Lim believed that Malaysia and Singapore could not share one currency as the Singapore assets of about $400 million would be stored in Bank Negara Malaysia. In other words, Singapore would have to hand over legal ownership of all its assets to a bank that was a statutory body of another country and subject entirely to its legislation and control. Singapore therefore had to make an independent currency to protect its national interests. The Singaporean dollar was introduced in 1967 to considerable fanfare. Many traded in their ringgits and Straits settlement notes for the new notes. After the ringgit suddenly dropped to 85 of the SGD, many more traded in their ringgit. National service. Lim Kim San also started national service in order to create a civilian army to protect itself. However, this was considerable resistance. The British had introduced the idea during the Malayan emergency, when the Legislative Council had passed a national service ordinance in 1952, which came into effect in 1954. However, residents of Singapore greeted the colonial move with vehement protests that snowballed into violence when Chinese middle school students rioted and barricaded themselves in. The policy came to a premature end. In addition, many university students was worried about disrupting their education. However, there was a huge need for the army due to the British pullout in 1971. The British were having troubles economically and decided to pull out militarily from east of the Suez Canal. Mr. Lim Kim San had a rich, fulfilling life serving Singapore and adequately showed that Singaporean Peranakans could contribute to nation building. May he rest in peace.